I know you're a big proponent of keeping deadlifts, and I know you actually mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. I mean, I think it was in reference to Mitch, but is that something that you are big on keeping in all year long? And if so, I know that's a movement that many tend to shy away from, whether it be they're afraid of injury or maybe they feel, oh, the fatigue to stimulus ratio or whatever have you, whatever the reason they come up with, they tend to, it could be a movement that a lot of bodybuilders even shy away from, but you don't. So maybe you could touch on why that is, and what have you done to make sure that with obviously keeping it in the routine, if that's something you do, how you keep yourself safe and healthy throughout that process. So
yeah, sure. So I mean, a deadlift to me is a bread and butter, a bit like a press. So if you try to build your chest without any pressing movements, without any barbell or dumbbell or machine pressing movements, and you just used flies, you wouldn't get very far, right? You know, after, especially if you hadn't built your foundation yet, you just wouldn't get that thickness in your chest without those heavy movements. We all agree with that, yeah? I believe the same would be said about a deadlift. You know, yes, it doesn't have to be a barbell conventional deadlift. You could sumo, or you could rack pull, or you could use a trap bar, or do a Dorian style, come down to the shins. But it is a bread and butter movement. You can't really, you know, if you do a back workout without deadlifts, it's very easy. You know, yes, rows are quite tough and chins are quite tough, but they're not deadlifts. You know, there's no amount of stimulus, you know, in comparison. So I personally believe you have to have a variation that fits you of deadlifting and squatting. You know, it might be a leg press for instead of a squat. It might, but you try and build your quads with just leg extensions, just isolation work. It's not going to happen. But there is some sort of squat that fits you, you know, and there's some sort of deadlift that fits you as well. So include it. And if it's the only reason not to do it is due to injury, but then I would ask, you know, are you doing this correctly, and are you doing the right variation for you? I mean, you might need a deficit. You might need to do it from a rack, but you want to have some sort of hip extension in there. You know, even if it's an RDL or a, you know, stiff leg deadlift, you know, you can't. I've had bouts of not doing those before, just for like, you know, 3 months or so, and everything just starts to suffer. It's just like, yeah, everything starts to come down in strength and in size, and it has because it's such a big compound exercise, it has a knock-on effect to hamstrings, glutes. Recovery seems great at the start, and you can really push, like, you know, maybe your squatting movements and that sort of thing. They go up, but yeah, posterior chain. There's nothing that. I mean, you just look at the back shots. To be fair, I wouldn't be surprised if they weren't that great if I didn't deadlift. It's simply plugging away for the last 12, 13 years of deadlifting.
Wow. Do you think that there's potential benefit to the fact that you train, and I know we were going to dive in on this, but you've been a proponent of training 3, max maybe 4 times a week, depending on the season, if you will, of throughout the year. Do you think that has a potential benefit to the reason why you can keep them in versus maybe someone who's training 6 days a week? Maybe you could touch on that a little bit, because I think those who are training maybe 5-6 days a week are typically the bodybuilders who tend to shy away from that movement. From my observation, like from what I've seen and people talking about it, that's just my observation. But yeah, maybe you could touch on that.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on there, because I'm getting, and I do train 3 days per week. There has been maybe 2 months this year that I've trained 4, just to split up my upper body during my dieting phase, but that reverted back to 3 as soon as recovery is starting, you know, getting a hit. And you're right, yeah, if I can't train 4 days per week consistently, it's because I'm deadlifting. You know, it's because I'm squatting every session, or deadlifting, or heavy pressing. You know, so yes, you're right. I get a day off after deadlifting, after squatting, after pressing, and that keeps me ticking over and recovering. If I was even doing something like an arms day or a shoulder day between deadlift and a squat, you're still not recovering fully. you're systematic fatigue, you're still training, you're still putting stress on the body and on the joints. Yeah, I certainly can't do high frequency squatting or anything like that anymore. If I'm deadlifting every week, it's like 2 sets, 2 maximal sets. I can't do 6, 8, 10 sets or anything like this, frequently. So I'll go in and I'll do like a top set, kind of 6 to 8 reps, maybe as low as 4, and then a down set that's 8 to 12 repetitions, and that's it. Then I'll move on, and I'll then focus on upper back work, rows, pull downs, etc.
Deloads, is that something you implement, or because of the fact that you're training 3 days per week, you don't need to, you find that maybe you don't need it?
Yeah. So it's exactly that. If I was training more frequently, I definitely would need a deload. I kind of do. I don't say like every 6 weeks I will do a deload, but I do